Hello, and welcome to Conversations Worth Your While, a show in which I chat with authentic, heart-centered experts about interesting topics to spark, inspire, and motivate personal and professional change. Today, we are talking about how to make change, how to handle change with grace and ease. And this conversation is worth your while because change is inevitable. Recent events show us how quickly life can change. We live in this exponentially changing world. We are constantly experiencing change. And how you manage change impacts how easily and how effectively you're able to respond to your own mental health and to the mental health of those around you. I'm Linda Bucher. I am a transformational speaker and a master certified life coach. And after living the life of a chameleon and feeling totally like a victim for 45 years, I finally discovered who I am. I connected with my passion and my purpose, and I reinvented my life so that it aligns with my true self. And we're going to be talking about that a lot today as well. But I've become a happier, more confident, and more fulfilled person. And this is how we become who we're meant to be in this world. Each of us, you have a rich, full life to lead. You have important gifts to give to the world. You have a splash to make. And in order for you to be able to do that, you've got to know your worth. You've got to become clear on your purpose. You've got to unlock those gifts. You've got to own your power. You got to get everything into alignment and free yourself from all those obstacles that want to hold you back. And if you feel like you're ready for that, you can go to my website and you can schedule a free clarity session with me. It's 20 minutes long, and I would love to talk to you and give you some clarity about that. But today, let's get back on topic, how to handle change with grace and ease. And today I have the pleasure of being joined by Thomas Rosenberg. He is the founder of Regenerate Coaching, and he is making beautiful ripples in a very unique way. Thomas helps people reconnect with themselves so they can fully share their unique gifts with the world. And he's doing it in a super unique way, maybe you haven't heard about before. So stay tuned. So Thomas, thank you so much for joining us today. How you doing?
Doing well. Thank you so much for having me, Linda.
Great, great. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing, why you're doing it? How are you making these beautiful ripples?
Sure. So I am a somatic coach. So I'm working with the body, on the body, through the body. And somatic coaching holds that we are what we practice, and we'll be getting into that later. And we learn through the body. So just think about how you're sitting, standing, walking, talking, how you breathe, the language you use with others. That's what you're practicing on a minute by minute, second by second basis. We learn through the body: reading, writing, walking, talking, riding a bike, driving a car. And so changing patterns in the body allows us to really change what becomes possible for us. And this journey for me really started when I had a near fatal bicycle accident 9 years ago. I had a traumatic brain injury in addition to broken bones. And so it took me 2.5 years to trust my brain again. And so talk about change, right? How do you handle this? How do you know everything that you held dear and you were raised to hold up is vanished, and you don't know if you can rely on that anymore. So how do you walk through the world with that? And being able, but I also recognized in that process that I had been trying to back myself into somebody else's box. And so with the life energy, however much I had left, I wanted to share fully my unique gifts with the world. And that has required me to be on this journey of reconnecting to my authentic self.
Yay! Amen. So beautiful. So beautiful. Something that you brought up that I think is really worth pointing out. You didn't say it directly, but you said it. And I have a very similar, not experience to yours, but similar outcome. It's that these big, giant challenges of change, the big ones, the nasty ones, they are always happening for us and not to us. So I think that's okay.
That's right. That's right. I mean, the silver lining.
Yeah, you can't see it when you're in the middle of it, but afterwards you're like, damn, that sucked and it was hard, but that was the best thing that ever happened to me. That's my experience. And I think that happens with a lot of people because it helps us to course correct and to realign into our actual purpose for being here.
Yes.
So we're gonna
And I would just add that they don't have to be as traumatic as a near fatal bicycle accident.
That's very true. That's very true. Yeah.
They can be much smaller, but yeah, having that recognition is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So change, we're talking about change today. We're talking about how to handle change with grace and ease. We just mentioned that change is happening around us all the time. And let's talk about the challenges. Okay. Change is so challenging. Every time we bump into big giant change, whether it's within us, like I had like civil unrest when I was 45 years old, like there was a big giant change happening in me. The real me was kicking and screaming and fighting and trying to get out. Or sometimes change, like my husband died in his sleep when my kids were 3, 4, and 3, 5, and 7 with no warning whatsoever. I'm a sudden widow and sudden single mom. And that was a big giant change, right? Then there's changes like the market just crashed and all the savings for retirement, I'm close to retirement age, are down 30%. Big giant change. There's changes everywhere. They're all around us. They're happening all the time. They cause stress, they cause overwhelm, and they have far-reaching tentacles that a lot of times we're not really willing to see, but they're there. And by tentacles, I mean stress and overwhelm because of change affects our eating, our sleeping, how we show up in our relationships, how we treat ourselves, what we're unable to do, all these things that we're unable to do when we're under stress and overwhelm, how we perform. It's so big. What do you discover when you're talking with your clients about the tentacles of change? What do you see?
So being a somatic coach, what I help them discover is really how it's showing up in their body. And how that, so you can say, well, I'm going to get up today and I'm going to be this way in the face of it. The reality is that you've been practicing a different way and you have this history that's already in your nervous system. And so you really need to be conscious of what those patterns are before and practice a new way so that you can normalize for your nervous system another possibility.
I love that. So when I was, I'll just say, living the wrong life, not listening to my inner GPS, going in the wrong direction, I was in physical pain 24 hours a day. I could sleep for about 15 minutes before I had to move because I was so uncomfortable laying in whatever. It didn't matter what the position was. There was no comfortable position. I'd be in meetings at work, and after about 4 minutes, I had to stand up. I couldn't sit in the chair anymore. My back was screaming at me. My gallbladder was tested. It was only working at about a 24% capacity. And because I wasn't, I mean, the way I believe it, I wasn't able to digest what was happening. So my body was like, we're not going to digest because something needs to change. This rigid stiffness, this pain I was in all the time. I had horrible migraines. When I made a life change, a big life change, the life change actually that, and to quit my big corporate job that I've been climbing the ladder for 26 years on, and follow this intuitive hit, which is the alignment to who I am, right? Because this is what you and I are talking about, is also being in alignment with who you are. Then I had 22 extra pounds on me. They melted away. I kept eating ice cream and Oreos, but the weight was gone. It was just going away. My back got about 90% better, and my gallbladder started working normally again. This was the somatic change. When you're talking about bodies, our bodies give us messages so loud and so clear, it's almost impossible not to hear them unless you don't know that it's a message. Then you just think, oh, I have physical illness. But you and I are here to talk about how the fact that this is a message, and if you listen to it, you'll know. So I'm so excited to be talking about you with this today.
Thank you. Yes, I'm looking forward to the unraveling the conversation because there's so much to dive into.
There is. Okay, so you've alluded to the origins, right? The origins of how each human has traditionally, in our own way, been handling, and I'm going to put handling in quotes because maybe we're not handling so well, but how we've been dealing with change, right?
Yeah,
There's some origins there. So tell us a little bit more about this. You already alluded to it.
sure. So when we humans have four primary ways of facing or confronting strong energy, and that is to appease it, to turn towards it, to turn away from it, or to dissociate. And so those patterns begin very early in life, and they are wise adaptations for us when we're little, maybe 3, 4 years old, because that's all we can do to manage that sense of overwhelm as a small person. And so that's a way of protecting us from greater trauma. And so it might be if you grew up in a household there where it wasn't safe often, you would dissociate because leaving the body that's where you could find safety. We're hardwired for safety, belonging, and dignity, and we are going to crimp one of those in order to ensure the other two. And that varies on the individual and also what's modeled for them. Maybe you turn towards, some people push against. Everything is a fight. Everything has to be a fight, and I'm just going to get bigger than that, and I'm going to conquer it somehow, right? And so it's really just being able to say, oh, okay, so this is my pattern, and is it still serving me? Because as an adult, you have a choice, but you've been practicing something for however many decades you've been on this planet, and that's hardwired. Well, it's deeply wired. I won't say it's hardwired, but it's deeply wired, deeply practiced in your nervous system. So your default response is, oh, I have to do this. It's something that you could also have inherited from. It's like, well, this is how we do it in our family, and you see it in your parents, your grandparents, aunts, uncles. It could be a specific, and so it's like, what is your lived experience and what's generational? And sometimes that's a very fine line that can get blurry, but it's important to see those two.
I love that you're bringing up that we have to recognize that's the very beginning of anything. It's awareness. So this is an awareness, like, what do I do when big, strong energy, when overwhelm, when change, when other people's crap is coming towards me? What do I do? And then let's move on to like handling change. What we want to handle change with grace and ease. So once we recognize, oh, this is how I've been doing it, and this is a habit, and I am ready and willing to change that habit so that I can feel better, so that I can show up better for the people who deserve the best of me instead of the worst, sick part of me, if I'm experiencing disease or, civil unrest or anxiety or whatever it may be. So we're starting with awareness, recognizing, and then we're going into the willingness to be able to embrace dealing with change in a different way, right? So like, what would it be like, right? This is like, this imagining part. What would it be like if I could, when I do, learn how to handle change with grace and ease?
So the short answer is practicing something else that gives you more opportunity to respond in an appropriate manner. And I say respond as opposed to react, because those habituated patterns, those tendencies, in somatic coaching, we call them conditioned tendencies, because we're conditioned from the practice. And that is what's going to, that's what is normalized in your nervous system. So you need to keep practicing something so that your nervous system recognizes that it has other options. And it's also important in this self-awareness process to recognize how you're cutting yourself off, because when we have strong energy, maybe you have strong energy coming towards you, and that's provoking anger or it's provoking fear, the tendency to protect ourselves is to cut it off. And so it ends up getting stuck in someplace in our body. And that might be holding your breath. That might be holding, tightening certain muscles, the low back, or the shoulders, or like wherever you happen to hold tension, the sides of, your legs. Like it varies for different people, but the point is recognizing where you're cutting yourself off, because then you can say, oh, I'm feeling that tension here again. What happens if I just let that relax? What changes in my breath? And then what becomes possible?
I love that. A lot of people are not aware of their bodies. When I'm working with my clients, I very often take them through a beautiful exercise that helps them to connect with the different parts of their body so they can recognize where they hold the stress, but also so they can use their body like a compass for what's right and what's wrong.
Yes.
I take them through this beautiful exercise. The very first time we do it, I'm just having them become aware of different parts of the body. Become aware of your toes and your feet, and I kind of just work up the whole, front and back of the body. The second time I take them through the exact same thing, but I have them imagine a time that was a really bad, difficult time for them, something that was so wrong and so off. They don't have to tell me what it is, but I'm cueing them to remember it and to kind of really be back there again. And then as I'm cueing them through their bodies, they're recognizing, I'm watching them go like this. I'm watching them struggle, or like everything's getting all tight. I'm watching their legs move and shake or whatever I see. I can see it in their body, right? And then at the end of that time, that's a second out of third times, I'm asking them, what did you notice in your body that was different from the first time we went through? And they're like, oh, my legs felt like running, or my neck was killing me, or my jaw got really tight, or my hands started sweating. So now they know where. Now this is this awareness piece. They're becoming aware. Where in my body am I experiencing physical symptoms based on the mental place where I just went? Okay. So they're learning there's a mind-body connection for themselves, because I could tell them that, you could tell them that, but they're not going to know that until they experience it. Then I have them shake that all out, because that's very negative and yuck, right? And this is where you're talking, like, you have to get this stuff out of your body, which we'll talk about more. But then the third time I take them through, I ask them to recall and get right back to the most beautiful, positive thing they can remember. Maybe it's, smelling the head of their newly bathed little infant, or cuddling with their kitten. Or I had a client be like, oh yeah, I was on this inner tube going down this lazy river. It was the best day of my life. Like, okay, let's go back there, whatever it is, right? Yeah. And then I bring them right through the exact same body thing again and noticing what physical responses are happening. Now they're reporting something totally different. The third time around, they're reporting, I feel like I'm floating, or everything just relaxed, or nothing hurts anymore. My normal backache doesn't even hurt, right? The three things I want to tell them. First is, the first one we took you through, it's not really neutral, because you're holding a bunch of stress in your body already. You should go talk to Thomas about that. The second thing is, you are neither in that difficult place or that beautiful place, but yet your body physically reacted to both. So this is the power of your thoughts, how it affects your physical body. And this is also the power of the connection. Now, the third thing is, there's a connection. So now you can go into your body and you can say, is this a yes or a no for me? That I tell them that difficult, whatever the difficult was, whatever those physical symptoms are, that's their -10 on the hell no, right? And then when we take them through that beautiful thing, whatever those physical feelings are, that's their +10. That's their hell yes. So let's just practice. And we're talking about practice. You're going to talk about that, I know, a little bit more about practice. Let's just practice with that. What are you going to be doing today? Give me 5 things you're going to do on your day. Let's go into your body. I don't care what your head thinks about them. My head thinks sending emails is bullshit, like, okay, fine. But how's your body feel? Tell me. Now you know where to look. You know what to tune into. Oh, I got to tune into my legs and tune into my neck. Okay. What does my legs and neck say? What number on that -10 to +10? This is the body compass. And I learned this through Martha Beck when I did my undergrad coaching certification. And, what does my body say about sending emails? oh, my body says 0. My head says that's a bunch of bullshit. My body's going to probably say -6, but no, my body didn't. It just said 0. It was neutral. Doesn't really care. Okay. So this is how we can practice. We can do it on menus. Oh, I don't know if I should have the chicken or the fish. Let's check in with my body. Oh, my body says have the fish. I did that once between fish and a big juicy steak full of cholesterol. And my head said you should have the fish, and my body said you should have the steak, and I ordered the steak. Right. You practice, practice, practice. No one's going to be good at this the first time. So let's talk about this practicing new tendencies. Like, what exercises do you bring people through?
So I want to preface this by saying that to make a habit, there are people who talk about practice. You can create a habit in 30 days. You need, neurologically, you need 300 reps to have a new habit, 3,000 to embody it, 10,000 reps for mastery. So really feeling into what does that look like? So 300 reps gets you a habit, whatever you're practicing. 3,000 is when you're starting to embody it. And so you've been practicing the way you breathe, the way you stand, the way you sit, countless times, right? Tens of thousands of times. So just think about that when you're practicing something new. So the exercises, that I bring people through in there, and it's interesting that you do that in succession, because we would I typically break down like that, that negative experience into just one exercise. And I help people understand as they intensify that, how they're cutting themselves off. And then we come back down and they notice what releases first, because that indicates the doorway out of that pattern for them. Because you may say you're intensifying that negative experience, and the last thing to go that you recognize changing is maybe your hips get really tight, but on the way down, it's your breath that releases first. And so just being able to say, oh, well, if I am feeling this way and I come back to my breath, then I can break this pattern, and then I have more opportunity. And similarly, for the positive image, we use that in a separate exercise to really practice resilience, because we so often talk in our society about needing resilience or demonstrating resilience, but we never talk about actually cultivating it. So what are you doing to cultivate your resilience so that you can take 5 or 6 minutes in any given day and just sort of say, okay, to your Linda, to your client's, image of floating on that lazy river on the inner tube. It's like, okay, I'm on that inner tube. I'm just laying there. I'm enjoying the sun, the wind, the smells, the sounds, like all of it. You're in that lived experience, and then you can just practice coming back to that, and your body's like, oh, like, I can revert to this, and I can notice what it's like when my body softens, when I open to what's present. So when we're talking about change, we're talking about really being knocked off center in so many ways. And we practice centering so that we can become present to what is, open to the moment, and connecting with ourselves and others, and on purpose. And on purpose is really who and what matters most to you. It's being able to act under pressure in alignment with your values and vision under the same old pressures. And it could be as simple as a fly landing on your nose and you're knocked off center. It could be a difficult conversation that you had with somebody. It could be rushing for the elevator bank in your office building and having the doors close just as you get there, right? It can be a variety of things, but just like, how do you come back to center so that you can feel that alignment with your authentic self and just say, okay, Can I honor, and there are 4 dimensions in this. So we're talking about our length, which is our line of dignity, our width, which is our line of connection or relationship with ourselves and others, and our line of history, our depth. And it's your individual history, your familial history, all of human history. And just feeling the power of integrating all of that into who you are and being able to operate from that center, from that. It is a center of energy, and it's in multiple language, multiple cultures. So in Mandarin, it's called Dantian. In Japanese, it's called the hara. In Turkish, the kof. But it's the lower abdomen. It's between the first and second chakras, if you're familiar with that. And it's operating from there. What would it be like to operate from there on a daily basis? And what becomes possible for you when you're operating from there? It gives you more opportunity to respond appropriately to whatever you're facing, no matter the emotion that is running through you. So as I mentioned earlier, we have strong energy, and oftentimes when we're confronted with that, we pull up and in, right? So we're cutting off breath, we're cutting off connection to the earth, and we sort of lose ourselves a little bit. And it's like, what if you were to settle into that and just let that strong emotion run through you and say, here I am. And this is the most appropriate way to respond in this situation. And then you can breathe into it and extend, not being off center.
Beautiful. That is beautiful. And Thomas, I know that you have something that can help actually bring people through more of the centering, right? You have some centering exercises that you can share with our audience. How could they go about getting those? And tell us a little bit about.
So I have recorded a 15-minute centering exercise, so it's a little bit longer, but for those who are unfamiliar with it, practicing this on a regular basis can be really helpful. And then you can make it your own, and you can shorten it because it becomes easier to sense into all of these different dimensions in your body. They can download this. There'll be a link in the show notes where they can download this, and they'll be able to access this MP3, put it on their phones, and listen to it whenever they need to.
I think that's beautiful and so generous. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I want to thank you for being a wonderful guest. You are truly, a heart-centered servant leader, making a splash in the world that is rippling beautifully. You're totally my kind of person. I absolutely love speaking with you today. I love everything that you've shared. I love learning and growing from all my guests. And this is just like, you're very eloquent in the way that you put things and explain them easily in a very understandable way. And I love that you have something to actually help people, because we need to prove it to ourselves. Like someone can listen, but if they actually go through your breathing exercise, then they will be able to prove to themselves that, oh my gosh, I do feel more centered. I do the same thing taking clients through. I have a little quick one. It takes me about 20 seconds to cue them through it. And then they get to use it whenever they want. I said, except when you're driving. Don't use it when you're driving. But you can use it any other time. Like any other time, and it totally just is very centering and it gets rid of the it just brings you to woo. Just in 10 seconds. It's the most amazing, and it keeps you out of your head, because that's why a lot of people have issues with meditation in the traditional form, because they're busy thinking. They don't realize that meditation is like yoga, that you're not expected to do it perfect. You're going to fall out of pose, and then you just get back in. You're going to start thinking, and then you stop. You say, I noticed I was thinking. Okay, and you bring yourself back. But when you're doing something like a centering exercise, and you have to think about it, now your brain's too busy thinking about what you're doing, and it can't think about what you got to do tomorrow and all the other overwhelming things. So I love those types of things where I don't have to just sit quiet and do nothing. Cue me through something. I love listening to something that's like, take a breath, count to this, whatever, or imagine your feet rooted into the ground, or like all these exercises are so beautiful because they keep your brain busy while you're centering. I think it's
Yes.
fabulous. So thank you so much for being a wonderful guest on Conversations with You All. I'm so glad you were here with us today.
Thank you so much for the kind words and for inviting me to be on. It's been a pleasure, Linda.
All right, awesome. Well, that is our show. And once again, I'm Linda Bucher. I'm a transformational speaker and a master certified life coach on a mission to inspire and impact millions of people to know your worth, to unlock your gifts, and to deliberately create big, beautiful ripples in the world. So if you feel stuck, unworthy, unfulfilled, or out of alignment, I'd love to talk with you. And you can go right to my website, lindabucher.com/chat with Linda, and just book a 20-minute clarity session with me. It's not a sales session. We'll just get you some clarity. And I really appreciate you being a listener today. So I'd like to thank you, devoted listener, for sharing your time. And until next time, please subscribe and make sure that you've made this conversation worth your while by fueling the spark that it ignited.